I'm Laura Ingle for Fox News. ISIS now claiming responsibility for the deadly London terror attack. Police are conducting raids across the United Kingdom as the investigation grows after a suspected terrorist used his car to mow down pedestrians on the Westminster Bridge before trying to attack Parliament. Joining us now with new insights into this attack, defense specialist and Fox Firepower columnist Allison Barrie. Thank you so much for being here. You are very important to talk to today because you have not only the unique perspective of your job, but also of where you live. So you live in London, and you are literally coming to the set out of breath because you just got off of a flight.
Yes.
So you were there. So let's talk about the site of the attack. I want people to understand the Westminster Bridge and Parliament. You've spent, of course, more than a decade working right there on Whitehall in London. You're regularly going in and out of Parliament building, walking right through where this attack happened. So I can't even imagine what it felt like to hear that this had happened for you. So with your first-hand experience, let's talk about the location and the security, because I think when we think of London, like New York and other big cities, you think high security. You know, there's a lot going on, but yet this happened.
Absolutely. I think the first thing I'd say is, you mentioned before we went on camera, it's such the majestic tone of the city. And really this site, I work there, literally a stone's throw from where this happened. I do walk through that spot day in and day out. And I have to say we're all aware, right, because it is an attractive target to terrorists. You've got all those iconic tourist landmarks. You've got Big Ben. It was right there in the shadow of Big Ben. You've got Westminster Abbey. You've got Trafalgar Square at the other end. And in between, which is about a minute walk away, you've got 10 Downing Street, which is like their White House. So it's the seat of government there. And then you've got the Ministry of Defense, which is kind of like our Pentagon, is right there as well within a stone's throw. So, you know, there's lots of those tourist attractions, and yet also it is the seat of government. So it has a lot of resonance on a lot of levels.
And on the security front, the police officer that was stabbed and killed, I read, was not armed. Unusual?
Such a great point. So Bobbies, like British police officers, tend to not, it's very unusual for them to be armed. It's a very different policing climate over there. Having said that, since we've had so many attacks, there has been a ramping up of armed police officers who are carrying and also trained in armed response. So when I walk up and down the streets, Laura, I do see a lot of armed police officers. They're outside 10 Downing, they're walking up and down Whitehall, they're certainly outside of Parliament. So they are there. There's very visible police presence with weapons, which is something we associate with here.
Right, yeah. I mean, when you're walking around New York City, you see it all the time, and I commute on the rail, and so every time I go into Penn Station, you know, we've got all different arms of government or police going on in there.
Absolutely. And Capitol, the Capitol building, we see very visible, similar to that, very visible presence in that respect.
Right. Well, you know, the identity of the attacker has been revealed. We know he's a British national who has been living in Britain, presumably. We've heard that. He's been flagged as a potential threat before, but we've heard that the Prime Minister noted the police had not been monitoring him. So what can we make of that?
So that's such an important point. I've been getting asked that question a ton. Like, you know, I've heard a lot of characterization that this is a police failure. I really want to stress it's absolutely not. And I think it's just a misconception because we don't hear about the successes, right? And first of all, I also want to give, before I answer, let's give some kudos. I know how strongly you support our forces and our policing. You know, these people put their lives on the line day in and day out to protect our lives. And the reaction on the spot was absolutely spot on. It was professional, it was immediate, it was appropriate use of force. They handled it immaculately once it happened. Now, if we take a step back, why didn't they catch them before? Theresa May, the Prime Minister, is talking about not being in the picture. What does that mean? It's kind of like triage in a medical sense, right? There's only so much manpower, there's only so many resources, so you've got to triage to some extent. You can't monitor everyone, and the scale is staggering. I hate to say this, and I certainly don't mean to be alarmist, but there's a lot of bad people out there who wish very bad things on good, innocent people. So it's impossible to monitor every single one of them. And those hard decisions do have to be made. And I have the utmost respect for the services. They've done such a good job. And as you know, they've stopped plots on our soil.
Sure.
So
all the
these
things
could have
we
been
never hear
devastating,
about, right?
All these things we don't hear about. So it really is, you know, it's unfortunate, but these are just the facts. These hard decisions have to be made.
This one person did a lot of damage by himself. He used a car. We've heard a lot about the threats of, you know, we've seen this, unfortunately, play out in other large cities and around the globe of using a vehicle to attack people. And it is something that we've heard a consistent theme coming from ISIS, that, you know, they encourage people, you know, do harm where you can and use vehicles. So here we go again on that. I mean, what can we do to stop it? I mean, I guess we can only put blockades
Yeah, no, that's such an important observation. Like you said, I think the first point is it's kind of a crime of accessibility, right? It's much harder to make a bomb, get those ingredients. You might have to contact a bomb maker. You might have to be Googling how to make bombs, which is something that might get flagged on the internet. We all have cars. We all have blades, you know, because there's two parts to this, right? There's the vehicle and the blade. These are all things that most Americans have at home and most people have. So it is kind of a crime of opportunity. We might not have machetes, but we do have blades, whether it's for hunting or, you know, cooking in your kitchen. So yes, it's very much encouraged by the whole spectrum, really, of Islamic extremists.
And the location of getting something big, a big, you know, a big get for them is hitting something right in the heart of London.
Absolutely. So vehicles, again, they're looking for terror, chaos, fear, right? And headlines are very important. Headlines are important to them because it's a recruitment propaganda tool, and also because it promotes fear, right? The more they've got headlines, the more people might feel like they're living in fear, and that's really handing a win to them. That's what they want. They want to disrupt our lives and make us change our way of life, so they're kind of dictating the rules of our day-to-day life, and that's not okay.
And as far as moving this forward, we know that there were 6 raids this morning. So can we expect more of that?
You know, it's interesting. Again, I just want to give them kudos. They reacted really quickly, right? They didn't, maybe they might have had some very early knowledge. They said maybe he's not a threat right now. But the second that they knew who he was and identified him, they moved incredibly quickly, right? 6 raids, that's a lot to like mount in a very short period of time. What will they be doing next? I think digital. So all those sorts of things we see on CSI kind of shows, looking at the phone records, trying to map out associates of the associates. We don't know. I don't know that they've confirmed in public whether this person is directly linked to those raids, but I think it's a reasonable assumption. And we also saw the Brussels raid. So it'll be interesting if there's connections, right? Because in the Paris vehicle attacks, there were connections to Brussels as well, those 2 attacks that we've had recently. So it will be interesting to see if Brussels and London were linked. But I expect they'll be working through the night, and they've got lots of teams on it. So I think you asked me before the show, should people be living in fear? And my answer to that would be absolutely not. You know, this is unfortunately a reality of life we're going to be dealing with, at least for our generation and maybe the generation to come. So let's not let them win, and let's carry on with our daily lives.
Absolutely. Book those trips, go about your lives. And I always tell my friends, when people say, how do you stay safe, I always say, eyes up. Because everybody's walking around with their phones, and you're down, and you're trying to figure out this. And I always say, eyes up, you know, pay attention to your surroundings. It's the best and really only advice sometimes you can give when we're living in this type of climate.
And also people can feel empowered because there are things that they can do. You know, if you see something, say something. If you hear something, say something. All these terrorists, the one thing they do have in common is other people in their lives. They have family, they have friends, they have colleagues, they have coworkers, they have neighbors, they have like the local shop that they get their milk at. All these people are in contact with them. So if you have that feeling, often terrorists take advantage of the great things about our country, right? People are reluctant to say something because they don't want to be perceived as racist or you know, casting judgment. But in this kind of era, we do have to be careful. So it's worth saying something and let a professional decide.
Allison Barrie, it's always good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Perspective. Thank you so much for bringing us up to speed. You can follow Allison on Twitter at Allison_Barrie, and make sure to check out Allison's new radio show, Tactical Talk, where each week you get to spend time with the world's top special operations warriors. Very cool. I'm Laura Ingle. This is Fox News.